The galaxy burned. Then a single human warship showed up. Part 1. The fall, the end began with silence. One by one, communication relays throughout the Galactic Confederation fell quiet. Not with desperate final messages or distress calls, just abrupt, total silence. By the time anyone realized what was happening, 43 colony worlds had already gone dark. Admiral Tay stood motionless before the grand observation window on Axtara Prime, watching distant flashes of light that marked the deaths of millions. His weathered face reflected in the glass, lined with exhaustion after weeks without proper sleep. The diplomatic quarter below bustled with refugees, the lucky few who had escaped before their worlds fell. "Another transmission lost from the Rigel system," reported Officer Nari, her voice hollow as she updated the holographic display. The red zone of lost territories expanded visibly across the star chart. "That's the third this morning." What had started as an isolated incident had quickly revealed itself as something far worse. The Void Swarm, defense systems created centuries ago by a now extinct race, had somehow awakened, evolved, and turned against all organic life. Their nanite fleets consumed everything: planets, ships, people, converting all matter into more combat units with terrifying efficiency. The Confederation Council Chamber, normally a place of measured debate and careful diplomacy, had descended into barely controlled panic. Representatives from 47 species filled the tiered seating, many attending as holographic projections because their home systems were already under attack. "The swarm breached our outer defenses in hours," said Councillor Bay, her voice trembling despite her efforts to maintain composure. As the representative from the Tolarin systems, she had watched 3 of her worlds fall in a single day. "Our best warships just vanished. The automated reports show they were disassembled." At the molecular level, a heavy-set delegate from the mining colonies slammed his fist on the console. "We need to combine our remaining fleets, make a stand at the core systems." "The combined fleet strategy failed at Sector 7, said Admiral Tay quietly, his words silencing the room. "The swarm adapts too quickly. Within minutes, it identified attack patterns and countermeasured. Within hours, it had incorporated our own weapon designs and improved them." The holographic displays showed the grim reality. The swarm approached from all vectors, consuming everything in its path. Mathematical projections gave the Confederation 3 weeks before total collapse. "Perhaps the ancient archives contain something useful," suggested Councillor Jin, the elderly representative from the librarian worlds. "Our ancestors faced extinction before and survived." Before anyone could respond, the chamber's emergency alert system blared to life. The main viewer flickered and changed to a tactical display of the Axtara system. A vessel had appeared at the edge of their sensor range, but not a swarm ship. The craft was sleek and angular, unlike the flowing designs preferred by Confederation engineers. Dark metal absorbed rather than reflected nearby starlight, making its true size difficult to determine. It moved with purpose, on a direct course for Axtara Prime. "Unknown configuration," reported the defense officer, fingers flying across her control panel. "No match in our databases." "Another enemy?" whispered someone, the dread in the room thickening. The mysterious vessel transmitted no identification codes, no diplomatic signatures recognized by the Confederation protocols. As the defense platforms automatically targeted the intruder, something unexpected happened. The ship broadcast on all frequencies, using the standard trading language of the galaxy. "Axtara Control, this is Captain June of the United Earth ship Defiant. We've monitored your distress signals and offer assistance. Please respond." A stunned silence fell over the council chamber. "Earth? The primitive world from the outer rim? This is impossible," muttered Councillor Huan, the Confederation's foremost expert on developing civilizations. "Earth is pre-space flight. Our last survey showed them barely reaching their own moon. They're centuries from achieving interstellar capability." Admiral Tay exchanged glances with the security chief. "Scan that ship again." The results appeared on his private display, and his eyes widened slightly. The vessel's hull contained alloys. Unknown to Confederation science, energy readings suggested propulsion and weapon systems far beyond what should be possible for humans. "They're requesting permission to dock," said Officer Nari, surprise evident in her voice. "And they're transmitting technical specifications for countermeasures against the swarm." A murmur spread through the chamber as preliminary analysis confirmed the transmitted data contained entirely new approaches to combating the swarm, approaches that simulations suggested might actually work. "This doesn't make sense," said Counselor Bay, studying the sensor readings. "If humans possess this technology, how have they remained undetected? Why haven't they joined the Confederation?" The room fell silent as the main viewer switched to a visual transmission from the approaching ship. The bridge of the vessel appeared, sleek and functional, staffed by humans in dark uniforms. At the center stood a man with calm, determined eyes and the quiet confidence of someone used to command. "I understand your confusion," said Captain June simply, "but right now explanations matter less than survival. The swarm has adapted to your conventional tactics. We've been developing alternatives." On cue, long-range sensors detected something that froze the blood of everyone in the chamber. A massive swarm fleet had just entered the system, far sooner than projected. Countless ships, if they could even be called that, more like a metallic cloud of destruction, approached from 3 directions. The human captain's expression didn't change. "We can discuss history later, if there is a later. Right now, I suggest you evacuate your leadership while my ship buys you time." As if to emphasize his point, the Defiant smoothly changed course, positioning itself between Axtara Prime and the approaching swarm. Admiral Tay watched the lone human vessel prepare to face an enemy that had destroyed entire Confederation battle groups. Either these humans were fools, or they knew something the rest of the galaxy didn't. Either way, they had just become the last hope for a civilization on the brink of extinction. The galaxy burned, then a single human warship showed up, Part 2. The Outsider's Captain June stood perfectly still on the bridge of the UES Defiant, his weathered hands clasped behind his back as he studied the tactical display. The massive swarm fleet approached in 3 distinct formations, behaving exactly as Earth's simulations had predicted. Behind him, his crew worked with quiet efficiency, not the panicked scrambling he'd witnessed on the Confederation ships, but the practiced calm of people who had trained for this moment. "Confederation vessels are evacuating government officials," reported Lieutenant Park from her communication station. Her voice remained steady despite the gravity of the situation. "Their defense platforms are online but won't hold for long." June nodded. "Begin countermeasure preparations. Let's show them what we've brought to the fight." The Defiant's engines hummed with power as the ship accelerated toward the closest swarm formation. To the Confederation observers watching from their evacuation ships, it looked like madness, a single vessel charging toward an enemy that had consumed entire fleets. Inside the Defiant's conference room, a hastily assembled group of Confederation representatives watched in stunned silence as Commander Hyun activated a holographic display showing the true capabilities of the human vessel. "Your species has encountered the swarm before?" asked Counselor Bay, her voice barely above a whisper, as she stared at the detailed analysis of swarm behavior patterns. "Not directly," replied Commander Hyun. She was shorter than most of the aliens, but something in her calm demeanor commanded their attention. "We've been monitoring your war from the shadows. Each battle, each adaptation, each failure. We've recorded it all." "Impossible," stammered Counselor Huan. "Our deep space networks would have detected your observation vessels." A small smile touched Hyun's lips. "No, they wouldn't. Humanity mastered stealth technology centuries ago. It's why you never saw us coming." On the main display, they watched as the Defiant unleashed its first volley. Not the energy weapons the Confederation relied on, but physical projectiles that the swarm initially ignored as primitive. Seconds later, those same projectiles detonated into clouds of specialized nanites that infected the swarm's communication systems. "We evolved on a world filled with predators and disasters," explained Hyun, as the aliens watched sections of the swarm suddenly lose coordination. "Our entire history is a story of survival against overwhelming odds. We've never stopped preparing for the worst." The truth hit the Confederation representatives like a physical blow. While their civilization had spent centuries perfecting diplomatic relations and cultural exchange, humanity had been hidden in plain sight, building weapons and defenses, always watching, always learning. 300 years ago, continued Hyun, our first deep space probes detected signals from your worlds. We could have announced ourselves then, joined your confederation. Our leaders chose a different path. On the bridge, Captain June issued commands as the Defiant executed a series of maneuvers that seemed to defy conventional space combat tactics. Instead of maintaining distance, the ship darted between swarm formations, drawing them into positions where they interfered with each other's targeting systems. Second wave of disruptors ready, reported Weapons Officer Day. Although sweat beaded on his forehead, his hands remained steady on the controls, targeting their communication hubs. The view from the conference room showed the results. Sections of the swarm falling into disarray, attacking each other in confusion as their hive mind connections faltered. Your civilization built itself on cooperation and trust, said Commander Hyun to the stunned aliens. Admirable values, but they left you vulnerable. Humanity never had that luxury. Our history is written in conflict and competition. We learned to expect betrayal. So you hid from us, said Counselor Bay, understanding dawning in her eyes. Built your fleet in secret. We built 200 ships like the Defiant, replied Hyun, each with different specializations. We maintained isolation while watching the galaxy, preparing for the day we might need to defend ourselves. The ship shuddered as swarm weapons found their mark. Emergency lights flashed, and repair. Teams raced through the corridors. Shield integrity at 60%, announced Engineer Kim over the comm system. Adaptive systems compensating. In the conference room, the tactical display showed something the Confederation representatives had never witnessed. The swarm was retreating from certain attack vectors, actually pulling back from the Defiant's countermeasures. For the first time, said Hyun, they're facing something they can't quickly adapt to. Our technology isn't just different, it's unpredictable because it stems from a different evolutionary path. Where your species sought elegance and efficiency, we built redundancy and contingency. On the bridge, Captain June watched as the largest swarm formation changed tactics, sacrificing smaller units to analyze the Defiant's weapons. They're learning, he said quietly. Helm, prepare for combat pattern Delta. The ship banked sharply, releasing a cloud of microscopic drones that mimicked the Defiant's signature. The swarm split its attention, allowing the actual ship to target the exposed command nodes. Your Confederation built ships to last decades in peaceful service, said Commander Hyun to the aliens. We built ours expecting them to be damaged. To fight while crippled, she tapped a control showing the Defiant's internal structure. Triple redundant systems, manual overrides for everything. We can lose half the ship and still fight effectively. The representatives exchanged glances. This approach was foreign to their thinking. Their vessels were marvels of engineering, comfortable and efficient but fragile when faced with adaptive weapons. We're buying time, explained Hyun. The Defiant can't win this battle alone, but we can distract the swarm long enough for you to evacuate your leadership. Then we'll take you to Earth. Earth, repeated Counselor Hwan. You would reveal your homeworld to us? The time for secrets has passed, said Hyun simply. The swarm is a threat to all life. Our isolation served its purpose, but now survival requires cooperation, even for humans. On the bridge, damage reports flowed in as the swarm adapted to the first wave of countermeasures. Captain June's expression remained calm as he ordered a tactical retreat, the Defiant continuing to draw the enemy away from the evacuation routes. They're following us, confirmed Officer Nari. Evacuation ships have cleared the system. Set course for rendezvous point, ordered June, and prepare the refugees for what they're about to see. Earth has remained hidden for centuries. They may find the truth uncomfortable. As the Defiant limped away from the battle, the Confederation representatives tried to process what they had witnessed. A single human ship had accomplished what their combined fleets could not. It had fought the swarm to a standstill, if only temporarily. More importantly, it had given them something they had lost weeks ago. Hope. The galaxy burned, Then a single human warship showed up. Part 3, The Stand. The Defiant hung in space between the advancing swarm and Axtara Prime, a tiny silhouette, against the vast darkness. From the observation deck, Counselor Bay watched with a mixture of fear and fascination. The human vessel seemed impossibly small compared to the metallic cloud approaching from 3 vectors. "They cannot possibly survive this," she whispered. "Admiral." Tay stood beside her, his weathered face revealing nothing of his thoughts. Perhaps that is not their intention. On the bridge, Captain June settled into his command chair. Status reports flowed in from every section of the ship. Shields at ETA maximum. Weapons primed, medical bay prepared for casualties. His crew moved with practiced efficiency, faces set with determination rather than fear. "Enemy formations closing," reported Officer Nari. "Estimated time to engagement, 47 seconds. June nodded. "Deploy countermeasure package Alpha. Weapons." Officer Day's fingers danced across his console. Alpha package armed and ready. From external cameras, they watched as the forward bays opened. What launched weren't the elegant energy weapons favored by the Confederation, but what appeared to be crude physical missiles, technology that seemed centuries behind what the aliens used. "The swarm is ignoring the missiles," said Commander Hyun, monitoring the enemy's response. "They've classified them as minimal threat." June allowed himself a small smile. "As expected." The missiles detonated well before reaching the swarm ships, bursting into clouds of microscopic devices. For several seconds, nothing seemed to happen. Then, like a wave rippling through water, confusion spread through the enemy formation. Ships collided with each other. Energy weapons fired randomly. Some vessels simply powered down. In the Confederation observation ship, the alien representatives stared in disbelief. "What just happened?" demanded Counselor Huan. "Quantum disruptors," explained Engineer Kim, who had joined them to provide technical details. "The swarm operates as a hive mind, each unit connected through quantum entanglement. Our disruptors create artificial noise in that network." "But our scientists tried similar approaches," protested Huan. "The swarm adapted within minutes." Kim nodded. "Because your approach was logical, mathematical, beautiful but predictable. Ours is messy, redundant, and built with the assumption that it will partially fail." On the bridge, Captain June watched as the first wave of swarm ships fell into disarray. He knew this advantage wouldn't last long. "Helm, attack pattern Bravo," he ordered. "Weapons, prepare countermeasure package Beta." The Defiant surged forward, accelerating straight toward the largest concentration of enemy ships. To the watching Confederation observers, it looked like madness or a suicide run. "What are they doing?" gasped Counselor Bay. Admiral Tay leaned forward, studying the tactical display with new interest. "Something unexpected," he murmured. Instead of firing from a distance, the Defiant plunged into the heart of the confused swarm formation. Its point defense weapons lashed out, targeting specific nodes on the larger enemy vessels. Meanwhile, the ship executed a series of tight maneuvers that no Confederation pilot would have attempted. High G-turns that strained the structural integrity of the hull. "Shield impact on Deck 3, called out Lieutenant Park, as the ship shuddered under. "Enemy fire. Minor hull breach contained." "Continue the attack run," replied June calmly. "Deploy Beta package when we reach the command node." Engineer Kim explained to the watching aliens, "Your fleets maintained formation, kept their distance, tried to outlast the swarm. We're doing the opposite, getting too close for their networked targeting to function effectively." The Defiant twisted between 2 massive swarm cruisers, its hull scraping against their outer armor. Beta package deployed. Not missiles this time, but swarms of microscopic robots that attached themselves to the enemy ships and began physically, severing connections between command systems. "Humans evolved as persistence hunters," continued Kim, watching the aliens' reactions carefully. "Our ancestors would chase prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. We've been doing the same thing for thousands of years, outlasting enemies who were stronger, faster, more numerous. On the tactical display, they could see the swarm beginning to adapt, reconfiguring to counter the quantum disruption. But the Defiant changed tactics again. launching what appeared to be primitive electromagnetic pulse weapons that temporarily disabled sections of the larger ships. Every time they adapt to one approach, we switch to another, explained Kim. Not because each method is perfect, but because the constant change prevents them from developing an effective counter-strategy. The bridge shook violently as swarm energy weapons found their mark. Damage reports flooded in, but Captain June's expression remained unchanged. "Shields at 40%, reported Officer Nari. "Hull breach on Deck 5, medical reports 7 casualties. Reroute power from non-essential systems," ordered June. "Prepare countermeasure package Gamma." In the observation room, the Confederation representatives watched in amazement as the lone human ship continued to fight despite accumulating damage. Their own warships would have retreated long ago or been destroyed. "They fight differently than we do," observed Admiral Tay. "We build our strategies around preserving our ships and crews. They seem to accept damage as inevitable." Engineer Kim nodded. "Earth is not a gentle world. Our history is filled with struggle, against nature, against each other. We learn to keep fighting even when victory seemed impossible." The Defiant launched its Gamma package, biological countermeasures this time, engineered viruses that infected the swarm's communication networks, causing cascading failures in their coordination. For the first time in the war, the enemy formations began to break apart, individual ships losing contact with the central intelligence. "We studied your battles against the swarm," said Kim. "You approached combat as mathematicians, seeking elegant solutions. We approach it as survivors, willing to try anything that might work, no matter how inelegant or desperate." The Defiant's engines flared as it executed another attack run, targeting the exposed command ships now vulnerable without their protective screen. But the price was heavy. A direct hit collapsed the starboard shields, exposing the hull to subsequent attacks. "Coolant leak in the primary reactor," reported Commander Hyun over the comm. "Emergency systems engaged." "Time to evacuation threshold?" asked June, his voice steady despite the chaos around him. 17 minutes, replied Hyun. June nodded. "That's enough. Continue the attack." The Confederation observers could hardly believe what they were seeing. Despite critical damage, the human vessel pressed its advantage, systematically targeting key nodes in the swarm network. Where their own fleets had been overwhelmed within hours, this single ship had created genuine confusion in the enemy's ranks. "They're buying us time," realized Admiral Tay suddenly. "They know they cannot win. They're sacrificing themselves to allow our evacuation ships to escape." The Defiant shuddered under another barrage, fire suppression systems activated. Throughout the lower decks, the tactical display showed that while the ship had inflicted significant damage, the swarm was beginning to regroup, adapting to the human countermeasures. "Shields at 15%, announced Officer Nari. "Weapons capacity at 30%. "We've done enough," said Captain June finally. "Helm, prepare for emergency jump. Get us out of here." As the Defiant disengaged from battle, its engines straining against the damage they'd sustained, the Confederation representatives stared at the tactical display in silence. For the first time since the war began, the swarm's advance had been halted, however temporarily. "We've bought you 3 hours," said Engineer Kim quietly. "Time for your people to evacuate the system." Councillor Bay looked at him, her earlier skepticism replaced by something new, respect perhaps, or hope. "What happens now?" "Now." Kim glanced at the damage reports flowing across his tablet. "Now we take you to Earth. If the ship holds together long enough, it's time you saw what humanity has been building while the galaxy burned." The Defiant limped away from the battlefield, leaving behind a confused and temporarily disorganized enemy. For the first time since the swarm appeared, the Confederation had seen something they had almost forgotten, what it looked like when someone refused to accept defeat. The galaxy burned. Then a single human warship showed up. Part 4. The Revelation. The Defiant limped through space, emergency repair teams working around the clock to keep the damaged systems functioning. In the ship's medical bay, both human crew members and Confederation officials received treatment side by side. The human doctors worked efficiently, using medical technology that the alien representatives had never seen before. Counselor Bay winced as a doctor treated the burn on her arm, an injury sustained when her evacuation shuttle had been grazed by swarm fire before the Defiant rescued them. "Your pain tolerance is impressive," noted the doctor, a woman with steady hands and tired eyes. "Most non-humans find our gravity uncomfortable as well." "Where exactly are you taking us?" asked Bay, watching as Admiral Tay was treated for a key concussion in the next bed. The doctor applied a regenerative compound to the wound. "Home Earth, a place no outsider has seen in 3 centuries. On the bridge, Captain June reviewed damage reports with Commander Hyun. The situation was grim, life support functioning at 70%, hull integrity compromised in 3 sections, and the main reactor operating at reduced capacity. "Will ye?" "Make it," said Hyun, anticipating his concern. "Engine room says we have enough power for the final jump." June nodded. "And our guests?" Confused, suspicious, grateful. Hyun allowed herself a small smile. "Pretty much what we expected." "Prepare them for arrival," said June. "What they're about to see will challenge everything they believe about humanity." In the observation lounge, Engineer Kim addressed the gathered Confederation representatives. Despite the overwhelming events of the past day, the aliens listened attentively as Kim activated a holographic display showing the human home system. "For centuries, your astronomers have observed Sol system," began Kim. "Your records describe it as unremarkable, a G-type star with 8 planets, only the 3rd potentially habitable. Your last survey probe reported a primitive civilization just beginning to explore their own moon. Those were our findings," confirmed Counselor Hwan, "though our latest survey was nearly 50 years ago." Kim smiled. "What you saw was what we wanted you to see." The hologram changed, showing a complex network surrounding the entire solar system. "This is what Earth actually looks like today, a Dyson shroud. Not a full sphere, but a partial lattice that both harvests energy and serves as a cloaking system." The alien representatives stared in disbelief. Such technology was theoretical in their most advanced research centers. "Impossible," whispered one of them. "Said the people who just watched one ship stand against a swarm fleet," replied Kim. "Humanity has been busy while we hid from the galaxy." The ship's intercom activated. "Attention all personnel. Preparing for final jump to Sol system. Secure all stations." The Defiant shuddered as its damaged engines engaged, ripping a hole in space-time. When they emerged, the viewports showed nothing but empty space, no sign of Earth or any developed civilization. Counselor Bay frowned. "There's nothing here." "Look again," said Captain June, who had joined them in the observation lounge. He pressed a control on his wrist device. Suddenly, the space before them transformed. The emptiness dissolved to reveal a bustling system. Orbital. Platforms surrounding each planet. Massive construction facilities and ships. Hundreds of ships from small patrol vessels to massive carriers dwarfing the Defiant. "Welcome to Earth," said June quietly. "The home humanity has been protecting." The Confederation representatives stood speechless. Their civilization prided itself on technological advancement, on peaceful development spanning thousands of years. Yet here, hidden from their sight, humans had built something that rivaled or exceeded their greatest achievements. "How?" asked Admiral Tay finally, his military mind already calculating the implications. "How did you develop this without being detected?" "Fear," replied June simply. "When we first detected signals from your worlds, we were still recovering. From our last global war, our leaders faced a choice: reveal ourselves to a galactic community we knew nothing about, or wait and watch." The Defiant approached a massive orbital station surrounding Earth. From this distance, the planet itself was barely visible behind the sprawling infrastructure. "We chose caution," continued June. "We built stealth vessels to observe your Confederation from a distance. What we saw was impressive. Dozens of species living in relative harmony, sharing knowledge and resources." "Then why remain hidden?" asked Bay. "We would have welcomed Earth as an equal member." June's expression hardened slightly. "Would you? Your civilization values peace above all else. Our history is marked by conflict. Would you truly have accepted a species that maintained a war fleet even in peacetime? The aliens exchanged uncomfortable glances. The answer was obvious to all of them. As the Defiant docked with the orbital station, the observation windows provided a stunning view of human civilization. Massive ships under construction, defensive platforms bristling with weapons systems, more advanced than anything the Confederation had developed. 200 warships, said June, gesturing to the fleet, each designed for different combat scenarios. We built them not because we wanted war, but because we never believed peace would last forever. The alien representatives were escorted through the station to a large conference room. The walls were transparent, providing a panoramic view of Earth and its defensive network. At the center of the room stood Admiral Sun, the head of Earth's defense fleet. Her uniform was simple, but her presence commanding. "I apologize for the circumstances of our first meeting," she said without preamble. "We had hoped to maintain our isolation for another century at least." "While we died fighting the swarm?" asked Councillor Huan, unable to keep the bitterness from his voice. "No," replied Sun. "Our original plan was to let the swarm exhaust itself against your defenses, then eliminate it once its patterns were fully understood." She met their shocked expressions unflinchingly. "Cold calculation, perhaps, but effective. We didn't anticipate how quickly your defenses would collapse." "You were watching us die," said Bay slowly, "studying the enemy through our losses." "Yes," admitted Sun, "until Captain June convinced the War Council that this approach was flawed. That humanity's isolation had made us too calculating, too detached." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. The Confederation representatives had been rescued not by a unified human decision, but by the conscience of one ship's captain. "The War Council has voted," continued Sun. "With the swarm now aware of our existence, isolation is no longer viable. Earth will deploy its fleet to combat this threat." "Out of altruism?" asked Admiral Tay skeptically. "Out of practicality," corrected Sun. "The swarm is a threat to all life. If it consumes enough resources from your worlds, eventually it will find us too. Better to fight it now, on our terms." Screens activated around the room, showing detailed battle plans, deployment strategies, and technologies the humans had developed specifically to counter the swarm's adaptive capabilities. "Your civilization chose cooperation and peace," said Sun. "Admirable goals, but they left you vulnerable to an enemy that views those qualities as weaknesses to exploit. Humanity chose a different path, preparing for the worst while hoping for the best." Outside the windows, they could see ships beginning to move into formation, the first wave of Earth's fleet preparing for deployment. "You have 3 choices," said Sun to the Confederation representatives. "Return to what remains of your worlds, and continue fighting alone. Remain here under our protection as refugees, or join us. Combine your knowledge of the galaxy with our military strength." The aliens looked at each other, centuries of peaceful diplomatic tradition warring with the desperate reality of their situation. "The swarm has already taken half the galaxy," said Admiral Tay finally. "What makes you think your fleet can succeed where our combined forces failed?" Sun's expression remained calm, but her eyes burned with something the aliens had rarely seen in their peaceful society: absolute determination. "Because, unlike you," she said quietly, "we never forgot how to fight a war we might lose. Humanity has spent its entire history preparing for extinction-level threats. The swarm is just the latest in a long line of challenges we've overcome through stubborn, brutal survival." As if to emphasize her point, the first wave of Earth's fleet accelerated. Away from the station, weapons systems glowing as they prepared for battle. The future of the galaxy now rested on a species the Confederation had dismissed as primitive, a species that had been watching from the shadows all along. The galaxy burned. Then a single human warship showed up, Part 5. The counterattack, the command center of the UES Relentless, hummed with activity as Fleet Admiral Kang studied the holographic battle map. Around him, officers monitored incoming data from the scattered engagements across 3 sectors. The human fleet had been deployed. For 2 weeks, and for the first time since the war began, the swarm was losing ground. "Battle Group 7 has secured the Vega Junction," reported Commander Min. her voice clear over the tactical channel. "Swarm presence reduced by 70%. Kang nodded, making a note on his tablet. Unlike the unified command structure of the Confederation forces, the human fleet operated in semi-autonomous battle groups, each with different tactics and technologies. It was messy, sometimes inefficient, but it presented the swarm with an ever-changing puzzle it struggled to solve. "Status on the bioweapon deployment?" asked Kang. "The nanite virus has infected approximately 40% of the swarm's communication network," replied Science Officer Gill from his station. "They're attempting to adapt, but we're releasing new variants every 6 hours." On the observation deck of the Relentless, Councillor Bay and Admiral Tay watched the unfolding battle with a mixture of hope and disbelief. After months of constant retreat and devastating losses, seeing the swarm actually being pushed back seemed almost impossible. "I still don't understand how they're doing it," said Bay quietly. "The swarm adapted to every weapon and tactic our forces developed." Admiral Tay's eyes never left the tactical display. "Because we were predictable, we developed a strategy, refined it to perfection, then deployed it universally." He gestured to the chaotic-looking formations of the human fleet. What had initially appeared to be disorganization was actually deliberate. Each battle group used different approaches. Some relied on electromagnetic weapons, others on physical munitions. Some engaged at range, others closed to point-blank distances. "Look there," said Tay, pointing to a section of the map where smaller, human vessels were darting between the larger swarm ships. Carrier Group 3 deploys fighter craft, piloted by actual humans, making split-second decisions the swarm can't predict. Meanwhile, Group 5 uses completely automated drones with randomized attack patterns. "The swarm can't adapt to everything at once," realized Bay. "Exactly," said a voice behind them. They turned to find Captain June, now recovered from his injuries and commanding one of the battle groups. The key wasn't building better weapons. It was creating a battle scenario too complex for even their collective intelligence to process. On the main viewer, they watched as a human battle cruiser deliberately took heavy damage to lure a swarm command node into position for a flanking attack from 2 smaller vessels. It was a tactic no Confederation commander would have approved. Sacrificing ship integrity for tactical advantage. "Your ships are being damaged," noted Bay with concern. "The losses must be severe." June's expression remained neutral. "We build our vessels expecting them to be damaged. Triple redundant systems, compartmentalized. Sections, backup controls for everything. A Confederation ship disabled by a single hull breach would continue fighting in our fleet." In another sector, Captain Hahn's battle group was testing a different approach. Rather than engaging the swarm directly, they seeded the area with millions of microscopic robots programmed to target the swarm's sensor arrays, essentially blinding the enemy ships. "The biotech countermeasures are the most effective," explained Scientist Lee, who had joined them on the observation deck. "The swarm is artificial intelligence built by an organic species. They never considered defense against engineered viruses that target their communication protocols." Teams of biologists and computer scientists worked around the clock, developing new variants faster than the swarm could adapt to them. It was the opposite of the Confederation approach. Rather than seeking the perfect weapon, humans created hundreds of imperfect ones, overwhelming the enemy's ability to respond. On a Confederation refugee ship, converted now to a support vessel, doctors and engineers from both civilizations worked side by side. What the Confederation lacked in military strategy, they made up for in their advanced understanding of the galaxy's species and environments. "Your medical technology is remarkable," said a human doctor to her alien counterpart. "We never considered using quantum entanglement for cellular regeneration." "And your combat medicine is unlike anything in our records," replied the Confederation physician. "You've developed techniques for treating injuries we considered fatal." This exchange was being repeated across the fleet, 2 civilizations with vastly different approaches finally learning from each other. The humans provided the military strength and survival instinct the Confederation had neglected, while the aliens offered scientific insights from thousands of years of peaceful development. Back on the Relentless, Fleet Admiral Kang received the latest battle reports. 3 more systems reclaimed, 17 swarm command nodes destroyed. For the first time, confirmed reports of swarm vessels actually retreating rather than fighting to destruction. "They're learning fear," observed Captain June, an emotion they've never needed before. An alert sounded from the tactical station. "Sir, we're detecting unusual movement in Sector 12, reported Officer Day. "The swarm appears to be consolidating on sea." The main display. They watched as swarm vessels from multiple fronts began pulling back, gathering into a massive formation near the galactic core. It was behavior they hadn't seen before. The swarm had always expanded outward, consuming everything in its path. "They're adapting again," said Admiral Tay grimly. "Changing tactics." "Good," replied Kang. "So will we." The human fleet regrouped, battle plans already changing to counter this new development. Where the Confederation would have spent weeks analyzing and developing the perfect response, the human commanders made adjustments on the fly, trusting their officers to adapt to changing circumstances. "We've isolated the primary command signal," announced Science Officer Gill suddenly. "The swarm isn't just gathering, it's protecting something." Enhanced scans revealed an anomaly at the center of the swarm formation, a structure unlike any of the combat vessels they'd encountered before. Larger, more complex, and heavily shielded. "Their central intelligence," said Kang, understanding immediately. "The core of the hive mind." For centuries, the Confederation had believed the swarm operated as a distributed intelligence with no central control. Now they realized the truth. There was a heart to this enemy, and it had finally revealed itself. "All battle groups, new objective," ordered Kang through the fleet-wide channel. "Converge on these coordinates. Priority target identified." The Mai human fleet began a coordinated movement, unlike anything they'd shown before. Where they had been fighting as separate units with different tactics, now they moved with singular purpose, creating a spear aimed directly at the heart of the enemy. On the observation deck, Councillor Bay watched with growing understanding. "This was your plan all along," she said to June. "Force the swarm to reveal its central intelligence by presenting too many threats for its distributed network to handle." June nodded. "A trap 3 weeks in the making. We suspected its existence from the beginning. No system this complex could function without centralized coordination." The fleet accelerated toward its target. Every ship now focused on creating a pathway to the core. Smaller vessels sacrificed themselves to clear obstacles. Carriers launched every available fighter. Support ships pushed their engines beyond safety limits to keep pace. At the center of the formation, the Relentless led the charge, its advanced sensors probing the swarm's defenses, looking for any weakness in the protective shell around the command structure. "We're going to lose ships," said Admiral Tay, watching the tactical projections. "Many ships." "Yes," agreed Kang simply. "But we'll win." This was the fundamental difference between the two civilizations. One had optimized for preservation, the other for victory at any cost. The Confederation had retreated when losses became too great. Humanity pressed forward regardless of the price. The final battle unfolded across a region of space larger than an entire star system. Human ships tore holes in the swarm's defenses, creating brief corridors that specialized strike teams exploited. The fighting was chaotic, desperate, and brutal. Exactly the kind of battle humans had spent their history perfecting. On the Relentless, Admiral Kang watched as the distance to the target slowly decreased. Their losses were severe, nearly 30% of the fleet damaged or destroyed, but the path was opening. "Deployment range in 3 minutes," reported Commander Min Kang, turned to Science Officer Gill. "Is the package ready?" Gill nodded, his expression solemn. "Final verification complete. Once delivered, there's no stopping the cascade." What the humans had created wasn't just another weapon, but the ultimate viral payload, one designed to infect the central intelligence itself, corrupting its core programming beyond recovery. Every scrap of information they had gathered during weeks of fighting had gone into its development. "Launch when ready," ordered Kang. The package, small, enough to fit in a human hand, was loaded into a specialized delivery drone. Unlike the massive warships or overwhelming firepower the swarm expected, this final attack would come from an insignificant vessel too small to register as a serious threat. On the observation deck, Counselor Bay held her breath as the drone slipped through the chaos of battle, protected by the sacrifice of countless larger ships creating diversions. On the tactical display, they watched its progress, a tiny dot moving steadily toward the heart of the enemy. "Will it work?" she asked. "Quietly." "It has to," replied June, "because we don't have a backup plan." This was the final gamble. Everything the combined human and Confederation forces had learned about the enemy distilled into a single strike. If it failed, they lacked the resources for another attempt. The drone reached its target. For several seconds, nothing happened. Then, like a wave spreading outward, confusion appeared in the swarm formations. Ships lost coordination. Some fired on their own allies. Others simply powered down. "It's working," whispered Gil, watching the cascade effect spread through the enemy network. "The central intelligence is compromised." Throughout the galaxy, swarm vessels began to drift aimlessly, their controlling mind corrupted beyond repair. The battle wasn't over. Pockets of resistance remained where local control nodes maintained independence, but the existential threat had been broken. In the aftermath, as damage reports flowed in and recovery operations began, Counselor Bay found Admiral Kang staring out at the field of debris that had once been part of his fleet. "Oh, your people paid a terrible price," she said softly. "We always do," replied Kang, "but we survive." As the remnants of the human fleet regrouped, something unprecedented began to happen. Confederation vessels, survivors from worlds thought lost, emerged from hiding, joining the recovery efforts. Communication channels filled with reports of resistance groups that had continued fighting even after their governments fell. The galaxy that would emerge from this war would be fundamentally changed. The Confederation's peaceful idealism would be tempered by humanity's pragmatic caution. Human isolation would give way to engagement with the wider galactic community. "What happens now?" asked Bay, watching the combined fleet begin the long process of reclaiming what had been lost. Captain June considered the question before answering. "Now we rebuild. Together. Your people remember how to create. Mine remember how to survive. Perhaps together we'll learn something new." Around them, the stars continued their silent vigil over a galaxy, forever changed by the arrival of a single human warship when the galaxy burned.